Hey Sarah,
Hey.
sorry about that.
It's
I
like,
was
oh,
setting up the breakout rooms, so I'm like hyper focused on that right now.
okay. Don't let me interrupt your life. Do your thing.
Okay. I'm gonna rename you.
Do whatever you want.
Can y'all hear
I don't
me?
know why I came in that way.
Are you
Yeah.
logged in with Tabby Webinars
Maybe on the,
out of your own?
I mean, mine has my picture on it when I was logging in.
Oh, that's so
I was,
funny.
I was doing it from the desktop version though, and on the web version, I might be in webinars. I
Weird.
don't know.
Very
It's
weird.
personal.
Okay, let me close up some of my thingers.
Can we stop the recording so we don't accidentally
Yeah. Okay.
sucker?
All right. So I will share my screen so we can look at the PPT. Oh, you know what? I meant to put in our chat right here. How in the hell do I attach a file? There we go. Oh, God. Why doesn't it have a list of my most recent folders?
That would make things easier.
Yes, it would, especially because my share screen is. All right, hang on a minute. Hold, please. I swear I was much more organized before I got on this link. I got to get all these things out before we actually go live. Just letting y'all know. Okay, so sending you guys the script. Since I can't share both of my screens at the same time. Okay, so everybody got that?
Yes.
So I really just, I cleaned up a few things, added in some of the slides that we didn't have on Sarah's script.
All right. Now the countdown begins to admit people. I left them a message letting them know it will start exactly at 10:30 a.m. Eastern.
Is Sarah back?
I'm back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should I not be on camera?
I'm just gonna grab this whole part.
Yeah, Amanda, you don't want to be on camera yet. Okay. And then everyone but Sarah wants to be muted right now, including me, but I'll get there in 1 second.
And for what it's worth, guys, I will edit down this beginning part before I even send it to anyone else.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so we have my video off. We've got the chat going. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Everyone can see my screen okay. Sarah, you got your script.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me get the Sarah Lunsford. Did you send? Sorry. Oh, my Siri pops up sometimes every time I say Sarah.
I'm hitting send right now, so if you'll check your inboxes for the latest and greatest schedule.
Okay.
All right. It's 10:30 on my watch, guys. I'm gonna open it up. All right, good morning, everybody. We'll give it just another minute for everybody to join, and then we'll get started.
Okay, so I guess we'll get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Lohner. I'm a senior key account manager for Solenis and the current chair of TAPI's Women in Industry division. I'm excited for this opportunity to help celebrate International Women's Day this year. Each year, International Women's Day serves as a powerful reminder of the progress made towards gender equality and highlights the work that still needs to be done. This webinar is hosted by both TAPI's Women in Industry division as well as PPSA, the Pulp and Paper Safety Association. So before we get started, I want to remind everyone that this meeting will be held in accordance with TAPI's antitrust policy and procedures. TAPI's aim is to promote research and education and to arrange for the collection, dissemination, and interchange of technical concepts and information in fields of interest of its members. TAPI is not intended to and may not play any role in the competitive decisions of its members or their employers or in any way restrict competition among companies. So let's do a quick review of the goals and guidelines for today's event. Our goals today are to have a positive and productive discussion. We want to uplift those around us and inspire everyone in a comfortable environment. We will empathize with stories and share our experiences, participate in conversation with good intentions. Remember, not everyone shares your same opinions and beliefs. Please be respectful and avoid any unproductive discussion around equity in the workplace, and then embrace the power of listening. The 2025 theme for International Women's Day is Accelerate Action. I think this is a very timely and appropriate theme for the year. Last year's theme was Inspire Inclusion, which encouraged teams to prioritize actions, policies, and initiatives that ensure inclusivity within our sphere of influence. Gender inequality affects different women in different ways, and there is not one cut and dry solution for everyone. Today, we are going to focus on what we can all do to accelerate action. Through TAPI's Women in Industry division, I've been able to connect with women all across the pulp and paper industry and work with them to grow in my career and educate others. The Women in Industry division works to see a competitive, diverse, and dynamic industry that offers long-term, fulfilling careers where women and men work synergistically. I think when we work together, and even if the work we do is small, we can all have an impact on our progress toward gender parity. Next, I will introduce our panelists for today. Our panelists will be introducing themselves, but I have Deanna Durham and Kim Moore with us here today. Deanna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, TAPI, for inviting me to participate today. My name is Deanna Durham, and I am a principal consultant and subject matter expert in the pulp, paper, and tissue sector for Trinity Consultants, a global environmental consulting firm. I also have the privilege of leading Trinity's Women in Leadership Initiative since 2019, and I have worked in the engineering field for more than 27 years. I'm a University of Michigan graduate, go blue, with bachelor's and master's degree in environmental engineering, and I'm a registered professional engineer. Some of the more interesting and fun things about me: I am a second degree black belt in Taekwondo, and I enjoy serving on international mission trips. Kim?
Thanks, Deanna. And I'm not sure how we managed this, but I'm a graduate of Ohio State. Go Bucks. So man, we got the rivalry right here. Hi, everyone. I am Kim Moore, and I work for Graphic Packaging as their Senior Director of Global Health and Safety. I am also representing the Pulp and Paper Safety Association today, as I am on their board of directors and run their education committee. So if any of you are joining us from PPSA, welcome. Excited to have you here. I have been doing health and safety, well, environmental health and safety really, for almost 25 years. So I have a real passion for safety, but I've also been a certified self-defense instructor, women's self-defense instructor, since 2001. So while I have a real passion for health and safety, I have a particular passion for women's health and safety. I am an avid traveler, love to read in my spare time, and I have a big baby of a pit bull mixed dog at home who thinks he's a lap dog. So when I'm not working, I'm usually cuddled up with a good book and a very heavy 72-pound lap dog on my lap.
All right, thank you, ladies. I guess maybe we'll all have to get together and you guys can teach me some moves for self-defense. So, but I'm really excited to have both of you here today. And I guess we'll just go ahead and get into the discussion here. So access to education and resources are critical for women to continue toward gender parity. How can we increase this awareness and set up these resources? Deanna, what are some of your thoughts here?
Sure. So first, as an individual, one must be willing to educate themselves. And I like to think back to my journey towards becoming more of an advocate. That really took a big turn when I read Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In. For me, like I'd been working in this industry for 15 years when I read that, and it literally shook my perspective. It just changed how I looked at things that have been happening around me pretty significantly. The book presents and talks about studies that show, like, if you have a resume in front of you, the exact same resume, and the name is male or the name is female, very different responses and ways that people would evaluate that individual just based on the name when everything else was the same. It made me see that unconscious bias really is a thing. And I learned that, you know, I wasn't imagining things and not alone in experiencing things such as men speaking over me frequently, which might be why I'm really loud and not afraid to speak, so I can speak right back over some other individuals. And so, you know, that really started me on my path. So it was a willingness to pick up a book and read, and then keep picking up books. I keep picking up books, and I try to learn tips and tricks and different situations and perspectives. And we are providing a list later in the webinar of some book recommendations. But it also goes beyond just reading and educating, because, you know, the theme today is accelerate action. So I also had to move from learning into action. And I've been fortunate enough to work in a company that allowed me to help do this at a corporate level. And we focused on then trying to find ways to facilitate learning for others, right? Form some small groups for book studies. We implemented mentoring programs. So formal programs, but you don't have to have a formal program to be a mentor or to be mentored, but you have to have a willingness to speak with people and reach out and share. I've benefited significantly from reverse mentoring, right? I might be the mentor in a relationship, but let me tell you, I learned so much when I'm mentoring younger staff and things like how the perspective in the world has changed since I was in their shoes starting my career. And another big thing for us was finding ways to create connections. So our firm is pretty geographically diverse. We have a lot of small offices. So we might have offices where less than 20 people. And so that can sometimes be like your world is your office. And then I might be a young person starting out there, and maybe I want to start a family, but I don't see anyone else doing that. Or I don't see anyone working part-time in that situation. So I don't know that it's an option until I'm able to connect with someone else elsewhere. And I hear, oh my gosh, half your office does that. How does that work? What is your manager? How did you do that? Right. So we looked for ways to try to break down barriers, to allow people to connect in order to have opportunities to share experiences and stories. And let's be honest, technology has vastly improved in ways that allows us to do that far more easily than when I started. And then one last thing, because I could keep going on and Kim's going to be like, give me some time. is look for professional groups like TAPI, right? This is a perfect example of, you know, if maybe there's not much going on in my company, or I want to look beyond just the experience in my company, well, go to a professional group. TAPI with the Women in Industry division is a great example. Lean In is an organization now that offers Lean In circles. So there's so many external opportunities, but you've got to take the action to go. So, all right, Kim, your turn.
I can't tell you how excited I am that you mentioned Lean In, Deanna, because I agree with you. So, look, there are a ton of books out there that are fantastic to read. I will say my number one recommendation is also Lean In. It was recommended to me by my male boss, who was so great at not just reading, you know, outside of things that he thought directly applied to him, but also then encouraging others in the workplace to read those same books. And he was always good at pushing me to achieve and pushing me beyond my comfort limits. And I think I read it in a day and a half. I mean, I just couldn't put it down. She wrote it in such an engaging way that I just couldn't stop. The way that the book broke down really simple concepts that ended up being incredibly powerful, really resonated with me. So sitting at the table, I mean, sitting at the table, that sounds like such a simple thing, right? And you don't realize how often sometimes you don't sit at the table, and you'd walk into a room and there's plenty of spots at the table, but you sit in one of those, you know, chairs around the outside of the room and kind of fade into the background. And just making sure that I would walk into a room and sit at a table was so powerful to me, even if no one else in the room recognized that it's not something I normally did. But it immediately made me feel more confident, and it immediately made me feel equal to all of the men and women that were also sitting at that table. And so, you know, taking up space is important to make sure that we do as women. Yeah, so it was a big part of how it closed that confidence gap for me, was actually that book. So I completely geeked out when you mentioned Lean In.
Thank you, ladies. So from my own personal experience, you know, the TAPI Women in Industry and TAPI as an organization in general has really given me the access to opportunities and resources and education that I just otherwise would not have had. And so, you know, I can't really, I know I'm here today, you know, as part of a TAPI call, and I'm, you know, currently leading the Women in Industry division, but, you know, it's not just, you know, a check the box or a, you know, resume thing for me. It's been a complete game changer for my career. And getting to meet with all these wonderful women has inspired me to just keep going and do more. So I love those responses. Thank you, ladies. We're going to switch gears just a little bit, and we're going to kind of jump into a safety topic, but we do have kind of a poll question for y'all. So hopefully someone at TAPI can pull up the poll.
Kim is actually going to ask the question. There won't be a poll. We're not
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No worries, I got that.
Okay,
Kim
sorry.
got
That
it.
was my fault. Okay, Kim. Let's ask them this question.
Yeah, so as we go through the next conversation, I want you guys to all think about whether or not your company that you currently work for offers women's sizing and designs in personal protective equipment, so PPE for short. So just think about that as Sarah and I go through this next segment. Oh, and I'm sorry, if your company does, that's fantastic. But give us a little reaction. So you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's a react button. On my screen, it looks like a heart. I'm assuming it might look like that for all of you. Give us a thumbs up, a clap, a celebration, a heart, whatever you feel drawn to let us know that you work for a company that currently offers women's PPE.
Thank you for the question, Kim. And we're going to kind of dive into this a little bit more, but women are often underrepresented in manufacturing and industry roles, yet we still need to think about safety. Where PPE is required, how has access to proper safety equipment improved in recent years? And maybe it hasn't.
I'm glad you asked it that way, Sarah. So I want to start by talking a little bit about women in manufacturing roles. So whether you're on the call right now and you're sitting in a manufacturing location or an office, I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that over the last 50 years, we haven't bridged the gap much. So we still have a huge opportunity to get more women involved in manufacturing roles. In 1970, we made up about 27% of the manufacturing workforce. Today, we make up 29%. So, we still have a long way to go because we make up 47% of the overall workforce. A big part of that, at least in my opinion, is that we need to make those jobs safer and more attractive to women. One way we can do that, one easy way we can do that, is by offering women's PPE. And this is something that you really didn't see much 20 years ago. So we've come a long way there. There's definitely hope on the horizon that we're going to see more and more and more of this. But I know there's a lot of vendors, including Hexarmor, who I know is on the call today, that offers women's PPE that's designed and sized for women. And that makes a huge difference in women's comfort in these manufacturing jobs, not just physically, but knowing that their company cares enough about them and thinks enough about them and the differences in their bodies that they went the extra step to make sure that they're providing PPE that is designed and sized to fit them appropriately. And it's not just about making women feel cared for, which is a huge and important thing, but also it's a big hazard. When we are required by law and simply by being good people to keep our folks safe, no matter what gender they are in the workplace. We have to make sure that we're keeping them safe. And having gloves that are folded over the tip of the finger, having vests that are 3 sizes too large, it's a big hazard. It's an entrapment hazard, an entanglement hazard. And so when we talk about accelerating action, I really feel like this might be an easy one. So if you happen to be a little bit shyer or on the quiet side, this is a good action to take. If you're not in health and safety, ask your company, hey, do you have those gloves in a women's size? Do you have that hard hat in a women's size? Do you have that vest in women's size? It can make a big difference. And if you are in health and safety and you can make sure to ask those questions, talk to your vendors. If they haven't already offered it up, they most likely now offer women's designs and women's sizing. When I started out in my career in the early 2000s and in late 90s, there was only 2 designs in the boot truck for women. For steel-toed shoes. Now there are far more. Certainly we may not be even with the men's sizing, but we certainly have far more options today. So it makes a big difference just to carry women's PPE. I would be remiss if I didn't mention there are other ways that we can make jobs in manufacturing more attractive to women and more accessible to women. Technology, I know Deanna touched on it earlier. Technology helps with that. There are wearables now that can help employees lift things easier, help them bend easier. There's technology that helps with chemical exposures. So if you happen to be in the health and safety field, you may have jobs like this where you actually have to move women out of those roles if they're trying to get pregnant or if they are, in the beginning stages of pregnancy. You not only need them to tell you, and you have to make sure that they understand to tell you, but then you have to move them out of those jobs for risk of chemical exposure. We have options now. There's new ventilation technology that can help make those jobs more accessible to women. And there's a lot of AI technology that can allow women to remotely monitor those chemical systems and not have any exposure risk at all. So I'm both a little scared of the future of AI and technology, as well as very excited for how much it can help us in the field of health and safety and keeping women safe at work, because we are different. We have different hazards and different risks that apply to us. For instance, Deanna travels in the field. That opens up a whole nother level of risk that I'm going to let her talk about.
Thank you, Kim. We did have somebody with a hand up. I didn't know if we wanted to see Elizabeth. Do you have a question or something you'd like to ask?
Yes, good morning. I just, so Kim had mentioned I'm with Hex Armor. So we do offer inclusive sizing for women's PPE. We're launching a women's footwear option as well. But I just had a question for the audience. We're trying to get more interaction with end users on what they're looking for in women's PPE. We've gotten a lot of feedback that they're looking for inclusive sizing versus something that's designed in pink and purple or more feminine colors. So I just want to put that, kind of pose that to the audience, and maybe they can put some answers in the chat of how we can support that initiative without making it feel like it's too feminine. Because the feedback we've gotten for the most part is they want to be able to wear the same PPE as men. They just want it to be the right size. So if anybody has any comments on that or more information on that, I would love to hear that, because that is something we're trying to pursue more heavily.
That's such an awesome question. I'm glad you raised your hand. Thanks for that. Yeah, if you want to put some chat in the, I guess, the chat about that. I guess, Deanna, did you have any safety tips or kind of answers along those lines for safety?
Yeah, I have a little bit different perspective because I work predominantly outside of manufacturing facilities. And so our safety considerations can be a little bit different. I travel a lot. I have staff that travels a lot. Depending on your role, that could be conferences and trade shows. So there's some unique things women think about in the context of, happy hours and things like that. But also we do a lot of traveling to rural or remote locations for mill visits, or I've done overnights out in the field. That could be in the woods, that could be near a bay, that could be in the middle of a city. And those bring about things that I have found over my career that men don't always think about on behalf of their female staff. A good example when it comes to travel considerations that is important to women and can impact parity when it comes to flexibility and capability to participate can be nursing moms. So there are a lot of things that you have to think about if you're a nursing mom and you're asked to travel somewhere, right? How do you confirm that there's a private area available for nursing? What do you do about milk storage, right? If, can I store it and return with it? Or am I going to be gone long enough that I need to ship it back? That's expensive. Are there opportunities for the employee to expense that? And then another thing is, I know when we go to meetings at a client site or wherever, those schedules are packed, right? Those meetings are back to back. Sometimes they're lucky to have a bio break. So imagine how daunting that can be for a nursing mom that is going to need a little bit of time to take care of nursing. And can that be accommodated in the schedule somehow without always being kind of awkward? Then there's the safety considerations when traveling. When I first started, the theme was choose the cheapest hotel options and travel during non-business hours. Well, I'm going to tell you from my experience, I'm really, really glad the tone has changed there, because the cheapest hotel or motel is generally not always the safest hotel. I really don't miss the days of feeling like I gotta put a chair under the door or doorknob, or worrying about, oh, I'm in a motel and anybody can walk by my window and who knows what could happen, right? Like, I can eliminate those options now, and that's important. So considering safety in the context of expense in travel policies is pretty important. And then, the other thing I love dealing with outdoor and remote or overnight field work, it's security, and it's those bio breaks, right? Like, I can remember a monitoring assignment where my male colleague was like, I'm gonna go over there and take care of business in the woods. Good for you. Have fun with that, right? Like, so what options do we have to not have to just be crossing our legs the entire night? Like, is there a safe place to go? are we planning accordingly for resources? Like if I'm gonna be someplace at 3 a.m. in the morning, should that staff member be alone? Right? Like are we staffing appropriately so that everyone is secure? Do we have contact info? And I can tell you, these were conversations that didn't happen naturally when I first started. And so we have to force those conversations. We have to be thinking about the welfare of all of our staff in the context of assignments and in policies. And especially because, I'm sure we could all raise our hands of, have you been the only woman in situation X, right? It can be intimidating to advocate for yourself, right? Because we're sitting there, and it goes back to kind of that lean in philosophy a little bit of, we don't want to be seen as emotional or difficult. We don't want to appear to be weak or different sometimes, but the bottom line is that we all have a right to refuse unsafe work conditions, and we have a responsibility to advocate for our safety and the safety of our team.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I did see some really good recommendations pop up in the chat. So I appreciate the question we had earlier and all of these really good responses. I like a lot of the comments around, we want sizes that fit. We don't want necessarily pink and purple colors. I think that's important to focus on when we have the conversation about women's options. It's not about, even it fitting and looking nice or being a certain color. It's about, things fitting for safety, which, obviously should be the focus anyway. But thank you, Kim and Deanna, for that. Deanna, did you want to kind of pose a question or?
Yeah. So, okay, sorry, getting back to the point. A little bit of a transition from these traditional women's safety topics is the reality that women deal with gender-based violence, not only at home, but in the workplace. And so how do you respond when you see this in action or provide support to survivors? Kim?
Yeah, that's a really important topic. So unfortunately, workplace violence is the #1 cause of workplace fatalities for women. For men, it used to be falls from the same height. It is being taken over by transportation incidents. But for women, it has been and continues to be workplace violence. And that is unfortunately not something that we are always preparing for. Often workplace violence isn't included in emergency response plans. Workplace violence isn't necessarily included in tabletop drills. And I'm not just talking about active shooter, but actually workplace violence, because 74% of women who are in domestic violence situations report that they experienced spousal abuse while at work. And that's important to think about. And we don't normally consider workplace violence as something that can spill into, or I'm sorry, we don't often consider domestic violence as something that can spill into the workplace. And we're seeing that happen more and more. So it's a very real risk that we need to plan for.
Yeah, thank you, Kim, for those stats. I knew, speaking from my personal experience, I was in a abusive relationship, and it did in fact kind of spill over into the workplace, not in that traditional sense, but it affected my job, and I was actually put on a performance improvement plan, or the PIP that we call it. But and I think for me the hardest part was to express, during that time, the things that were going on, and, not to justify or excuse, some of the things that were happening. But I think when my boss and my manager, kind of understood what was going on, that, this was not my normal, work, and, there were things that were going on. So it's difficult to have those conversations, but I think as we continue to share messages and just open up, I think that we're going to get better and be able to support people, not just women have things that, spill over from home to work or work to home. It can be something that happens to anybody. So, thank you, ladies, for those comments. I think we will go into another question, but kind of talking about the home. And speaking of work from home, work-life balance tends to affect women more, especially those with families. How have you used work-life balance in your career, and where do you think you could improve? And has technology kind of played a part in this balance?
Sure, I'll respond. Technology improvements have clearly made an impact, and I will say positive and negative when it comes to juggling work and life. To some degree, 30 years ago, it felt like it was easier to have a divide. When you were in the office, you were at work. Home and family life didn't always bleed in as much to a degree because communication was much more limited. When you left work, okay, maybe you brought some work home with you. And so your family saw the work version of you, but it seemed like at work didn't really see the outside of work version of you very often. Now, the qualifier there would be probably working moms that are still always juggling the higher load. Studies have shown women continue to juggle the higher load of commitments related to family and household relative to men. It's improving, but it's still that way. Today, I feel like there's much more of this bleeding and this mixture between work and home, in part because of communication and technology, right? And our remote work and hybrid work environments have helped to facilitate that. And again, pros and cons. When I'm in the office today, there's a really good chance my teenager's texting me, right? Like, I can't always avoid it. And every once in a while, I throw the phone into a drawer to ignore it because she doesn't want to hear what mom's about to say right then, right? And so that's where it kind of goes both ways. I might also do some personal stuff because I'm like, oh, I'm going to Google this right now while I'm thinking about it and and then the flip is also true because when I'm at home or I'm at a sporting event with the family or an activity or dinner, right? My smartphone and all those wonderful work apps and notifications make it a lot easier for work to bleed into what I'm doing. All right. That's a lot to balance, and it requires you to set your boundaries, right? It really does require you to be conscious of boundaries. As a manager, it's also about me adjusting my mindset with how I evaluate staff. And a good thing is thinking about it, when I first started, perception was about your butt being in the seat in the office, right? If they didn't see you, you weren't working. That's not appropriate today. I shouldn't be measuring or evaluating people on that as a metric, right? So our staff has shown amazing effectiveness in a remote working world. But I also have to be cognizant that just because you have a smartphone and you have an app, I, as the manager, shouldn't be expecting 24-hour responsiveness just because they can get messages so easily, right? So my highlights, set your working boundaries, all right? I had a boss, he would leave always before 4 p.m. so that he was home with his kids at dinner. He would spend the evening with his kids when he wasn't traveling. And once they were in bed, he pulled out his laptop and he started doing some more work. Those were his boundaries. Respect that others may work at different times and plan accordingly. I am a really early riser. My team will get emails at 5 a.m. in the morning from me. Okay. And they know, they've learned, send her stuff late at night when they're done working on it. She'll knock it out in the morning. Okay. So you learn how to work around people's schedule. And I've added language to my emails that say, if you are receiving this email outside of your normal working hours, please respond at a time that works for you. Managing work and life responsibilities is unique for everyone. All right. And I'm doing that because I don't want people to think, oh my gosh, my boss just sent me an email. I have to respond right now. Right? Like, I have to respect their boundaries when I also ask them to respect mine. So those, of course, are tips that are most beneficial to those that might work in a more traditional office environment. And I'm sure Kim has some input related to the manufacturing environment.
Well, actually, I gotta say, Deanna, you make a really good point. You know, here I am talking about emergency response plans, and encouraging those on the call that have some way of impacting emergency response plans to make sure to include workplace violence. And I didn't mention, you can't forget about your employees that work from home. You know, that if they're struggling in a domestic violence situation, the flexibility of working from home might sound great, but now it's become a nightmare where they can't escape it when they're working from home or you know, living in their home. So
Very
we
true.
have to look at it from all of those aspects, just like you mentioned. And I know Sarah had asked us about how we support you know, folks that are going through that. And I just want to make sure to let you guys all know, if you're looking again for an action that's easy to do, become familiar with your EAP resources. Every company has some kind of employee assistance programs. There's a ton in there usually around domestic violence, but not just that, elder care, child care, all kinds of different issues and things that pop up that can put additional pressure on us. So become familiar with those so that you can help support if anyone does come to you with an issue. If you're a safe place, and I encourage everyone to try to be a safe place to their coworkers, and they come to you, I just want you to be prepared to be able to talk to them about what resources are available.
Thank you, ladies. I want to point out one comment from the chat that I really enjoyed was from Liz. On these realistic situations, make me think of safety as a cost. How do we start seeing safety as a pro, investing the money to keep our employees healthy, safe, and efficient? I mean, I can't think of something that kind of summed up what accelerate action is kind of all about is, you know, how do we start thinking of some of these things that are seen as, you know, a cost or a, you know, as a good thing and a benefit. So I think that I really enjoyed that one. I think what we're going to do now is kind of open it up to the attendees. If you have a question or you want to type something else in the chat, we can talk about it. Or if you want to raise your hand and speak on camera, that's fine too. You know, we really wanted this to be sort of like an open discussion, and we've already had a lot of that, which is really great. But are there any questions or kind of discussion from our audience?
I will just say one thing, Sarah, while folks are putting their questions into the chat. You know, absolutely people think of safety as a cost. A lot of the actions we've given you here today cost nothing. You know, doing some tabletop drills around workplace violence, other than time, doesn't normally have any kind of cost associated. You're already purchasing PPE, so adding women's sizing most likely isn't going to add a tremendous amount of additional cost. So sometimes I like to highlight those areas. You know, becoming familiar with EAP resources costs you nothing. I like to highlight those things to my higher ups and my fellow coworkers, just to make sure folks know it's not about you know, spending the most money. Certainly we want to invest in technology and things that can help keep people safe and make them feel included. There's also a lot you can do that costs nothing.
Awesome. I do not see any messages or questions. That's fine. We have some other activities that might spark some discussion, so we can maybe move into that. But I think first we wanted to do a fun kind of group activity. So I think we're going to have everybody do a pose for International Women's Day. Yes. So the strike the pose. We're going to spread the word by sharing. So International Women's Day is actually tomorrow on Saturday. One of the easy things that we can all do is share something on social media. But since we were all on the call today, we wanted to try something a little bit different and fun. We want to encourage all of us to participate in striking this pose. We're going to do a virtual group shot of everyone. So the pose on the screen is the accelerate action pose. And we're going to kind of have everybody turn their cameras on, and we're going to see if we can use the snipping tool, to try and capture this. So this, we'll see if this works. I think it will. But if anyone that wants to participate, you can turn on your camera. Thank you, Amanda.
Stop sharing the screen. Hopefully everybody captured what the pose looks like.
I see a lot of people turning their cameras on. This is fun. Okay, so I think there's a way for Tappy to change the view. So we'll see
Not turn on my camera because this disabled it.
Oh,
this is fun.
You have to
Okay.
change the gallery view.
Yeah, gallery view.
yep.
All right.
Who was that couldn't turn on their camera?
Nicole.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me see if I can fix that.
But I think when we go to gallery view, though, it filters out the non-cameras, right? Maybe.
I've filtered out the non-cameras, and if everybody who's on screen could do the pose, the 1, 2, 3, strike the pose.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm getting multiple pages. There's a lot of you. Thank you for holding. Don't mind me. I'm a millennial, so I like lots of options. Got them. Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome.
So I think Tappy will be posting that on social media if you want to steal it and reshare it. I encourage everybody to do that. There's also a lot of really great content on the International Women's Day website. And if you want to actually create your own post, there's tons of super cool resources on there to do that. So I just encourage everyone, with this year's theme being accelerate action, kind of as I said in the beginning, if we all do an action, even if it's small, it does have an impact. So I think what we're going to do now is go into our breakouts. Okay, so as part of this, we wanted to give people the opportunity to have some smaller discussions. And so we've got different breakout room options. You're not going to be placed in one automatically. You'll have a choice. So the first breakout room is on women's safety, and that's going to be led by Kim. Breakout room 2 is uplifting the next generation of women. That will be myself. Room number 3 is advocating for yourself in all aspects of your life, and that's Deanna. And then we're joined by my vice chair of the Tappy Women in Industry Division, Amanda Kernan. She's going to be doing room 4, which is the importance of mental and psychological safety. So you should see something on your screen with the option to join a breakout room. If you click join, then you will have the.
I think Sarah clicked join.
Yeah, I think she did. At the bottom, I think for the others, there's the option to click, right? Which breakout room? It says join breakout room.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
And they are open.
I'll go ahead to
Might be
mine then.
under your more. So, and certainly once we get the audience down a little bit into the rooms, go ahead and click on the room you'd like to join now. Wait for your discussion until your moderator arrives. Again, women's safety in the workplace is room 1. Uplifting next gen is room 2. Advocating for yourself is room 3. And importance of mental and psychological safety is room 4. If you are having trouble joining a group because you don't see the pop-up or you're getting bounced out, just give it another second and I will move you when we again get down to maybe fewer than 10 people. Okay, anybody left in this room?
About the
Okay, all right. Well, we've got another 30 minutes before the room's 30 minutes, 30 seconds. It's time math. 30 seconds until the rooms are all empty and closed. So let's just give it another minute for the 40 some people to rejoin.
I'm back here, Rita. So,
Hey Lou.
hey, Sarah. Sorry, I've had nothing but trouble with my video today
That's okay.
on my phone.
Lou joined like 10 times, so yeah.
Oh, I see people starting to filter back in. Good.
Yep. Yep. So room should be closed now. And
Okay.
Hannah, do you want to go ahead and put up the whiteboard? And I'll
Yeah,
let
at least
Sarah,
you're
and then
gonna.
I'll move into the instructions. Sarah, if you want to give our lead in.
I will. Okay, so I hope everyone had a good time in their breakout rooms. I know in our group we had a pretty good discussion. And I kind of keyed up this next exercise, which is the whiteboard sticky notes. Our wonderful Lisa Lockwood from Tappy is going to introduce this and explain it because she does a way better job than I do. So Lisa, if you want to give us some instructions, hopefully nobody has technical difficulties, but hey, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, you know, some people might, but that's okay. You can always use the chat as well. We'll capture everything that is put in the chat. If it's a comment about your particular group, make sure that you add that in. Like, I was in group 2, I want to add this. So up at the top, you'll see the name of our event, International Women's Day, Accelerate Action. And next to that, you will see a number. Right now, it's on page 2. So go to page 1. Right? And then you see the whiteboard. Now, what we want to do is add sticky notes. So if you right click on the whiteboard, you can, okay, a minute, here we go.
It's showing up as view only for me now. I know when we
Hannah?
posted it
Yeah,
in
I know.
email.
Hannah, can you check and make sure that we're in edit mode? Sorry about that. Oh, maybe I can, no, can I?
Can I ask, Lisa, excuse me, I'm so sorry. If I could do that for you guys.
Yeah, it was working earlier. So,
Yeah,
well, as we keep going along.
okay. I think I have it in edit mode
There we
now.
go. Now we're
Okay.
in edit mode. Perfect. Perfect. So when we're on page 1, you can click anywhere on the screen, right click, and it will open a sticky note. And you can start typing in your thoughts and ideas that you'd like to share. So in each room, you guys had great conversations. So let's start with group 1. And Kim, we're going to have you lead a bit of this discussion about what your small group discussed in their time. So I'm turning it over to you, Kim.
Awesome. Okay. We had a great session. We had a lot of participation. You're probably seeing a lot of ideas going up. So we talked a bit about companies making mothers' rooms available for women in the workplace in order to have safe places to pump, and in order to have some place to store milk. We had a lot of great participation and recommendations on different policies that companies can have, like virtual sign-ins if you're a remote employee and you're going into the office. That way, if there is an emergency, your boss or someone in leadership knows that you're there. We had some conversations around PPE. Thankfully, Elizabeth joined our group, and she works for Hexarmor, so she talked a lot about some of the different inclusive sizings that they're coming out with, and not just sizing, but also stretch to allow it to really hug a woman's hand or her wrist or a vest that might hug her body a bit more. And the point of that being in order to make sure that that loose clothing isn't available to get into machinery. So we had some great conversations. We talked about ways you can incorporate safety into all of your meetings, having those safety briefings at the beginning of every single meeting, whether you're a office employee or a manufacturing employee, that you are talking about safety and making sure it's at the forefront so that all of your employees feel like they're included, they're safe, you care about them, that sort of thing. So a lot of great conversations. I know you're seeing a ton of sticky notes go up. I had a great group. They were willing to come in here and put as many stickies up as they could.
Excellent. Let's go to page 2. So hopefully everybody sees, or you can move yourself on the left-hand side of your menu. Move to group 2, and Sarah, we're going to turn it over to you to talk about your breakout group. And I know that some put some stickies in on page 1 for breakout room 2. That's okay. We'll move it over later. Don't worry about it. But if you do want to re-add here so that everybody can see it, that'd be awesome too. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa and Kim. I'm glad you had such a good conversation in the first group. We had a really good conversation too, about, the next generation of women. And, we had some people share some really great comments. I shared a personal experience kind of, coming up in school. We were always told that women can be a part of STEM and industry, and you can do anything you want. And I always felt that even throughout school. And then all it took was one experience after I graduated in a paper mill to make myself feel like, no, we're not really, the message didn't translate, right? And so we've got to make sure that if we're having these positive conversations and sharing these messages, that then when women do get out into industry, that, we still have that feeling that we belong. So, I think we talked a lot about, TAPI and things that we can do personally, sharing, I've done a lot of work with my stepdaughter. I volunteered in her school every year and did a presentation on engineering. TAPI Women in Industry also has the Girl Scouts, which is really fantastic. We've done a lot of activities with them. But then we kind of talked too about, we're attracting more women, and that's great. But then getting to the point of retaining women is where we kind of have issues. And I think the more we have these conversations and the more we see women in leadership, making the decisions, I think we talked a lot about that too, is, having women in those roles does kind of help make sure some of these initiatives and the women's point of view is making its way to reality, right? So I think and we also talked about this, which I had kind of meant to say earlier, but a small thing that I'm able to do with my own experiences in a meeting, if there's not a lot of women or if there's a few other women, if I speak up and have a point of view, kind of then looking to another woman in the room and saying, hey, do you have anything to add to that? Or, kind of opening up the opportunity for them to speak, I think just helps give more women a voice, especially if they don't feel comfortable speaking up, giving that opportunity. So I think we had some really good conversation. I see we got a couple of sticky notes that I hope kind of covered what we talked about too, but I'm excited to hear from some of the other breakout rooms.
Okay.
Who's next? I
So
can't
on that
remember.
note, we're going to go over to Deanna and her room on advocating yourself.
Oh, yay.
I can only imagine how that room was knowing Deanna and
Oh, good grief.
how she's just not the shyest person out there. But I've also seen just a personal note, I've seen Deanna be such an advocate for everyone around her. It's always great when we can lift each other up, and she does an amazing job of that. So, Deanna, walk us through your breakout room.
Thank you, Lisa. We had some fun in there. And I will say, some of our talks were about my first ask was, what tips have we taken away from today? And there was a lot of discussion around that. Sitting at the table comment really hit home. And I really loved this practical tip is, okay, sit at the table and be a presence. At every meeting, try to make sure you make at least one comment during that meeting, right? Because then you're being recognized, you're being seen. And then that also transitioned into a discussion about for senior leaders to help create space in those environments for the individuals that are not always outspoken. And one of our introverts spoke up and said, I really appreciate when that happens, because I may not always be willing to step in, but if someone creates an opening for me, then I'm more apt to say something. Couple of book tips. We had a good one recommendation. Nice girls don't get a corner office. And so I put that info there. It's a good one to add to our book list. And that tied into a comment about the fact that someone said, if I had read more books earlier in my career, I think that would have influenced my confidence level, and I would have learned how to influence others sooner. And then we segued into some specific examples and discussions about conferences. And this is where I should have had my damn it doll so I could bang it on the table as we started talking about, I'm a highly intelligent, capable individual speaking at a conference in the happy hour, and you're hitting on me with an expectation I'm going to go to your room. Seriously? Right? And so we were like, we started talking a little bit about like, how do we prepare staff for these situations, right? And we talked about sometimes we can feel like deer in headlights, right? And we think afterwards about all these things we should have, could have said. And so, a couple things someone mentioned, they use a buddy system at conferences because again, they tend to be the only woman. So they always make sure there's a male that's generally with them. The downside to that, she said, was then I get mistaken to be the wife. So there's an unconscious bias at play there. But our closing takeaway was, we get deer in headlights sometimes advocating for ourselves in challenging situations. Practice advocating for others. So just that example of creating a space for an introvert to speak at a meeting is a step, or calling out a bias that you see is a step. And the more you do that for someone else, it will become ingrained more in you that it will be comfortable advocating for yourself in these uncomfortable situations.
Thanks, Deanna. I know Amanda had dropped off, but I think she's back.
I'm back.
With internet issues.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Right, so we're over on screen 4 now, page 4. So again, add your sticky notes, add your thoughts so we can collect them. And Amanda, over to you.
Yeah, sure. So Deanna kind of gave me the perfect segue here when she was talking about advocating. So, advocating for others also makes them feel safe. So that was the topic of our breakout. It was on psychological safety. So we talked, we can have allies that help us feel safe in work environments. One stat that I shared that I thought was really impactful really quick was that, if you guys don't know this, so teams with high psychological safety are 76% more engaged and 50% more productive, which I thought was huge. And then women that are 20% less likely than men women are 20% less likely than men to feel comfortable taking risks at work. So we do know this is an important topic. So the team had a lot of really great feedback. Like I mentioned, so some of the sticky notes here, being an ally for others helps, leading by example, refraining from any negative self-talk. There's one up here about, you can participate even if your position is lower than others. Obviously, feel free to speak up. Creating an environment where everyone feels seen and heard. Let's see, encouraging conversations, taking risks and making mistakes without the fear of, retaliation or embarrassment. I think Hannah, can I scroll over here? What were some of the other ones? All right, any that I missed? This phrase here, that fail is first attempt in learning. That's a great one. Feeling psychologically safe, it's important so that you can make real change. Anything else from my team that I missed that you guys wanted to add? Okay. Yeah, otherwise I think it was a really good conversation.
Thank you, Amanda. I love these breakouts. I think getting in the smaller groups is fun on these webinars because, you get a lot of people talking, but then it gives people more of that, like we've talked about here, is giving people the opportunity to speak. So thank you for participating in the breakouts. I do enjoy the sticky notes. I think that's just really fun. And I think Lisa will get back to the slides, maybe.
Yes. Am I
Okay.
on the right one, our reading list?
Yes. So during the planning for the event, the panelists shared their favorite books. So we created this reading list to help you begin your personal journey. We'd like to have everyone add some of their personal favorites, to the chat. And I think we talked about some other books earlier. So I think we're just making a list, and the Women in Industry division also has a book club, and we're trying to meet quarterly. I know we've done 2 or 3 books so far. The book on the bottom of the screen, She Thinks Like a Boss, Leadership, was one that we did as part of the Women in Industry book club. So I'm sure as part of the communications from this event, we'll kind of share some more on that as well. But, reading and, growing and educating yourself is a big part of kind of things that we can do. And so I was really glad that the ladies shared some of these. I've read a few myself, but not all. So I will have to add those to my summer reading list as we start to get some of this nicer weather. I went a little out of order, obviously, before. Sorry about that. I had a different copy of what we were doing. And so we've done this, and hopefully it came out fantastic. I look forward to seeing all of those poses and
Sarah,
the pictures.
I do want to encourage people to take a selfie of their pose, and this
Yeah.
weekend change your social media picture to you striking the pose, and then encourage your followers, your friends to do the same.
Yes. Yay. Thank you,
Make
Lisa.
it viral.
Okay. So an upcoming event for TAPI's Women in Industry is the Women's Summit. We had a lot of fun on this call, but imagine what we could do in person. So every time we meet, we just keep having better conversations, great ideas. And so to keep the momentum going, the Women's Summit is co-located with TAPICon, which this year is in Minneapolis. The Women's Summit is the Saturday prior to TAPICon, which this year is May 3rd. It's 1 to 7 p.m. So we have the summit and then an after networking kind of event that's really fun. If you want to scan the QR code, that will take you to the sign up for the Women's Summit. But I hope to see a lot of y'all there. Again, you know, the Women's Summit has been great in years past, and I look forward to it again this year. I want to thank my panelists. Deanna, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. I know you talked a lot about mentoring, but I kind of look up to you as a mentor. And I didn't know Kim very well prior to this event. And so I've had such a fun time getting to know Kim. And I think her and I will be doing a lot more in the future. But I think the safety perspective for this event was really fantastic. And I hope everybody enjoyed this today. I want to say a thank you to Tappy. So Sarah Lunsford and Lisa Lockwood are always the best. They do such a great job. Amanda Kernan, Vice Chair of Tappy's Women in Industry Division. I always enjoy working with you as well. But I hope everybody had a great day today. I know that International Women's Day is actually tomorrow. So I hope we take some of this momentum and bring it into, you know, the actual celebration of the event. But I did want to share something. So one key statistic stands out for me as to why we must accelerate action. At the current rate of progress, it'll take until 2158, which is roughly 5 generations from now, to reach full gender parity, according to data from the World Economic Forum. That's 5 whole generations. This is our grandchildren's great-grandchildren. Despite a century or more of effort, gender inequality remains deeply entrenched in many societies. Accelerate Action emphasizes the urgency of making faster, more effective strides towards gender equality. Accelerate Action also moves from awareness, which is important, but takes it a step further to action. We need to focus on measurable outcomes and long-term solutions rather than short-term, superficial changes. I'm grateful that many companies are celebrating this day and using this occasion to spread awareness. This will conclude the webinar today, but I hope you all have a wonderful day and are inspired to accelerate action. So thank you, everybody. And that's the end of our webinar. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Great work, ladies.